Welcome to In the Name of the Law with your host, Liisa Speaker from Speaker Law Firm. Joining her today is Steve Sinas from Sinas Dramis Law Firm, along with Mary Chartier and Takura Nyamfukudza from Chartier Nyamfukudza PLC. Now let's discuss some remarkable stories and real cases.
Welcome to In the Name of the Law. Today we are talking with a man who is exonerated for murder, what to do if you are in a car accident, and an innovative way to approach family law cases. Stay tuned.
In the name of personal injury law.
We frequently hear about senior citizens being the victims of scam and fraud. There's so many bad people out there that know how to be sneaky and trick senior citizens. So today we're talking with Steve Sinas, an attorney at the Sinas Dramis Law Firm, to help provide some guidance to not only senior citizens to protect themselves from fraud, but also their family members who might want to help protect their loved ones. And with Steve, he has a special guest, Steve Whelan, who is a police officer and has his own special, unique experience with a senior citizen fraud.
Yes. Thank you very much for having us. It's really good to be here. Our firm decided to bring more awareness to this issue because it seems to be increasing in terms of the ways in which seniors can be defrauded. There's so many ways with technology, whether through emails and phone calls, just deceptive things that can happen out of nowhere where a senior might be trusting somebody, but yet that person is just all out stealing from them. And so we want to bring more awareness to this issue, and we have Officer Whelan with us to help us with some pointers and guidance. But he's going to start with his own experience. So why don't you tell us what happened to your father?
I had investigated a lot of different frauds over the years, and when my dad was about late 80s, he had gotten a phone call, and someone said that they had kidnapped my oldest nephew, which is his grandson. My dad was terrified. He was told to go buy green dot cards and buy these cards and then give these people this number. So my dad didn't know anything about how to do that. He went down and pulled $10,000 out of the bank, went to a local store to do that, and that clerk stopped my dad from buying that. So my sister ended up getting a hold of my dad, went and picked him up, but my dad was so distraught. It was 3 to 4 hours of him driving around to try to figure this out, and he was convinced that his oldest grandson would be hurt or devastated by this situation. So my dad was so terrified that it caused him to lose confidence, and he really never drove again, and he died a few years later.
Oh, that's so sad. Did the clerk alert the authorities, or did the clerk basically instruct your father to go talk to your family members?
That's exactly, he did.
Yeah.
He encouraged my dad to call my sister.
Okay.
And there's so many instances I'm aware of where the family member does come in and basically save the day, and it's not the senior's fault. It's just they don't see it, and so it's someone else recognizing it.
Well, and they're in panic mode, right. At that
Right.
point. So what other types of fraud and scams have you seen?
There's so many different frauds. A lot of them start on the phone, where someone will say that they're the person's bank, they're the person's credit card, and it will cause the person to start giving out their own information, like their credit card information, like their social security card numbers. It's very easy to defraud a phone number where you'll call and that person will think that is the police department or that is their bank, where there's so many different people that can do terrible things. And the person was just basically being trusting, thinking that they had a problem, and this person is actually stealing from them.
So if you get a call out of nowhere and someone's asking for your confidential information or your financial information, maybe the best thing is to verify that is absolutely the company that says who they are, or not even trust the call that comes in like that?
I would never trust anyone that's calling you, asking you for that kind of information. If it's your bank, you can go down to your bank. If it's the Social Security agency will not ever ask for someone's information like that. So the hard part is you really don't want to trust anybody. But if you do get a call like that, if you hang up, call a loved one, if you actually contact that person yourself, then that number will be more realistic. There's so many different ways through a computer screen saying that there's something wrong with your computer. All we need is your credit card number and we'll fix your computer. And then there's even ways for someone to get inside their computer and then defraud them in terrible ways. So this doesn't just happen to seniors, but I think seniors are a little bit more vulnerable. And it's just, I've seen it in so many cases, and sometimes significant amounts of money, of hundreds of thousands of dollars, that people have been defrauded.
So are these people who are committing these scams and frauds, especially against senior citizens, are they being criminally prosecuted?
That's the difficult part, is there is people that can investigate these situations. Oftentimes, I know in my experience, the leads have kind of gone dry. Either it's someone overseas or someone that has encrypted their information in very difficult ways. So they are hard to find. We have been able to find a few people and track them down through our different IT departments and everything. It's just a very difficult time to solve.
Does it usually involve not local authorities, but maybe like the federal authorities?
So, right. So we do encourage people to contact the FBI or the Secret Service if there's a situation with higher level issues. I think the fraud a lot of times happens even on the very small level, where somebody comes up and says, hey, I'll mow your grass, give me $50. The person takes the $50 and they don't mow your grass. So I think it can be a very small issues, or it can be a bigger issue on the phone. The challenge is, I think we're in a day where we need to be careful to not trust people just because they contacted us.
So, Steve Sinas, are there civil claims that a senior could pursue if they've been defrauded in some sort of scam?
It's very similar to what Officer Whelan just said on the criminal side. So with the law, you have the criminal law where you have prosecutions for crimes, people go to jail. On the civil side, you have claims where you can pursue money damages and other remedies against people who somehow wronged you. And so if somebody has defrauded you or somehow stolen from you, perhaps there is a civil claim that you could bring, but you're going to have the same problems of identifying that person, serving them with a lawsuit, and actually having them be subject to the litigation because perhaps it took place from another country or another state or whatever it may be. So it's just as hard on the civil side. And in that sense, we're just trying to bring awareness to this issue because it is the deceptive call out of nowhere that can change a senior citizen's life in terms of, losing their money. I have a friend in the area, and his dad was just subject to a very extensive fraud where lost, 6 figures in terms of trusting somebody who said that they were a financial advisor who wasn't. So there's some serious issues out here.
There's some things you can do. If you feel like you've been defrauded, you can call your local police department to get a police report number and have an investigation begin. It can be a situation where we know that person, that they've possibly been in the home and that person's been a trusted person. Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important to report this out if there's a situation. And also, if you ever have any kind of thing like this happen, call the credit bureaus to put a fraud alert on your credit rating.
Is there some sort of hotline, or if a senior citizen calls, will the police station help give advice to kind of guide them if they really don't know what to do?
So they won't give financial advice, but I think a police officer can come out or you can go to the police department and at least assess the situation.
Now, I understand you also maybe teach some classes on this. So there's like local community things where seniors can go learn about how to protect themselves, right?
I have given some seminars in churches in the area,
okay,
and that has been really well received. Just talking about the issue, I think, helps to resolve it for some people.
The thing I'll say is that it never hurts to verify, right? So if somebody calls you and is asking for information you're not sure, or if you have some notice in your computer, or some email says you have to do something, think to yourself, well, what are they saying they represent? And let me verify. Let me call the company's main line. Let me ask somebody from the company, did you actually send this to me? Verification never hurts. Trusting without verifying does.
Right. So, and I think also not just calling the police, but if you have a family member you trust, right?
Yes.
There might be people in your life that
Don't
you know will...
Don't be embarrassed.
Right.
Tell your family member, say, I think something might have happened. Can you help me?
Yeah, great. Well, thank you for these helpful tips.
Thanks for having us.
Steve Whelan and Steve Sinas.
Thanks for having us.
In the Name of Personal Injury Law is brought to you by the Sinas Dramis Law Firm. in the name of criminal defense.
On this episode of In the Name of the Law, criminal defense attorneys Mary Chartier and Takura Nyamfukudza of Chartier Nyamfukudza are joined by Marvin Cotton Jr., who is now a published author. Marvin was wrongfully imprisoned for 20 years after a jury convicted him of a murder he did not commit. He was ultimately exonerated in 2020. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you,
Now,
Lisa.
Mary and Takura, I know that I sound like a broken record, but I understand your firm just had a big not guilty verdict on a capital case in state court. Congratulations.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Thank you so much. Our client is thrilled and his family is thrilled.
Okay, Marvin, I understand you just had a book published. Tell us about it and what moved you to write it.
My book is entitled Better Not Broken. As you stated, I was wrongfully convicted of a crime I didn't commit. And the book is, I wrote it like an autobiography, but it's a self-help book. So I wrote it so that people can not only understand the struggle that I went through, but the mindsets that I had to develop in order to get through what I've been through.
So Marvin, did you write the book with with a broad audience in mind or like a particular narrow focus?
Absolutely. I wrote it for anybody that has ever been through something and going through something. So pretty much I wrote it for everyone. Although I'm using my prison experience as an example of just a very tough struggle, I wrote it in a way to where no matter what your struggle is, you can actually see how I got through the time that I went through in order to get through whatever you're going through.
And what were some of you said essentially your mindset, you had to develop like a particular mindset. What was that?
One thing that I talk about a lot in my book is forgiveness. I was wronged by the system. I was horribly wronged by the system. So without forgiveness, I would have never been able to see clear enough to be able to work on my case the way that I did, to find my way out of prison, because I would have been so stuck with the things that was paining me. So I had to learn forgiveness. Not only did I have to learn forgiveness, I was no angel by any stretch of the imagination. So I had some people that I needed to forgive me as well for things unrelated to the case. So I used that time just to better myself and become a better human being, so that I can be a better human being as I face the struggles that I was facing.
Now, Marvin, last time we spoke, you were a guest on our podcast. And at the time, you were doing a lot of motivational speaking and doing work with other exonerees like Ken Nixon. Are you still doing that work?
Oh, absolutely. Ken Nixon is my partner in anti-crime. We do a lot of things together. We were actually supposed to be here in Lansing together. I'm in Lansing, Michigan, but the event that we were supposed to be attending today was canceled. But yes, I still do motivational speaking. We still travel the country advocating for innocent people. And we just trying to help people in everything that we do every single day.
That's amazing, Marvin, because you're not just focused on Michigan, you're focused on wrongful convictions nationwide, right?
Oh, absolutely. Because, every case affects every other case. Here in America, wrongful convictions is America's little dirty secret. It's right there in our face, but nobody wants to talk about it. So bringing awareness that this actually exists, it actually happened. I'm walking living proof that wrongful convictions happen, but I'm also walking living proof that with the right people in place, we can actually begin to fix that problem. So just bringing awareness countrywide is so necessary to the struggle.
So, Marvin, how long did it take you to write your book?
It took me several months to write it. When I finished, I wasn't happy with it. So a very short time before I released it, I deleted maybe about 80% of the book. I just wanted to be more open. I wanted to be more, just pour more of myself in it to where it was important for me for the reader to really get to know who I am in the way that I think. So I wrote maybe 80% of the book shortly before I released it, and I was happy with the finished product.
You should be happy with the finished product. Not only is, I think, writing a book a real accomplishment, Lisa has written a book, but also the subject matter is so important, as you said. And I know you talked about, that you talk about the mindset that you developed and the forgiveness. Just really hard, honestly, for me to even comprehend the ability to forgive it in there. So you cover that. but do you also talk about any reforms that could be made, whether it's in your book or when you're speaking, to stop people from being wrongfully convicted?
Well, not necessarily, because I wanted to focus on it being a self-help book and help people deal with whatever trauma or impact that they're dealing with in their life. To me, that was the most important thing. As you know, I'm on the front line fighting this criminal justice system every single day, dealing with reforms. But in the book, I just wanted to make it about the people, make it about anybody that if I'm able to get this book in somebody's hands, I know that it's going to be a help to them.
So the book is great for personal growth, right? But then if they see that you're out speaking somewhere, they should go as well, because not only will you talk about your own personal growth that will help them, but also reforms for the system that everyone can get behind. Is that accurate?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And then it's a real look into what prison looks like. I gave the raw, ugly truth about the type of treatment that you experience going through the processes of fighting a trial. I talked about the emotional impact and the trauma that I was going through in real time as I was talking about going through the trial, going through the filthy jails, the different experiences that I experienced being locked in a cell. So people get a chance to go to prison without actually going to prison.
Now, Marvin, can you speak on the importance of Michigan's second look proposal?
Oh, absolutely. We live in a country of redemption, where everyone should have a second chance to fulfill their potential. Especially if they're striving for a second chance, they should have a second chance to strive for their potential. I don't think that a lot of the young people that was locked up as teenagers should die in prison for something that may have took 30 seconds. A horrible decision or a wrong decision for 30 seconds shouldn't cost a teenager the rest of their life, or a young adult the rest of their life. So I do believe in second chances, and I think society would benefit with giving second chances. A lot of the solutions to the problems we face is locked away in a prison cell. I can still be in prison. I had a natural life sentence for a first-degree conviction, a wrongful conviction, and I was supposed to die in prison. But look at the work that I'm able to do now.
I mean, you're literally changing the world, and you and Ken and so many people who have been wrongfully imprisoned and released, and then you haven't just sat around and you don't feel sorry for yourself or just go on. I mean, you could go on, be out traveling and doing all kinds of great things, but you're really trying to change the world for other people. Just absolutely amazing. And why I know that you are the hero of so many people, including everybody on this show. And we have had Marvin on our podcast, Constitutional Defenders. We're going to beg that he come on again for people who are interested. You can learn more about his amazing book, and you can learn more about the reforms that Marvin can speak to, again, on Constitutional Defenders. Marvin, you are a hero.
It's available. It's available on Amazon. It is an Amazon bestseller.
So, it is a bestseller. It is a bestseller, right? And then who knows, if you run into Marvin, maybe he'll sign a copy for you.
That's right.
Well, he's in Lansing today.
Yeah.
Thank you, Marvin, so much for joining us today.
In the Name of Criminal Defense is brought to you by Chartier Nyamfukudza, PLC. Go to WLAJ.com for more information on today's topics and to view other In the Name of the Law episodes. In the Name of Family Law.
I'm here with Rachel Kelley. She's a family law attorney with Your Path Family Law. She practices in the Kalamazoo area, Metro Detroit, and also the Lansing area. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
So today we're going to talk about Rachel's innovative idea to help families going through divorce and custody litigation. So let's start with backing it up about what brought you here in the first place. And we're going to talk about what it's like to be a parent who's going to have to face co-parenting with their soon-to-be ex-spouse, or maybe even with the parent they've never been married to, and they're having to deal with custody litigation.
Yes, thanks, Lisa. So something that people don't think about a lot when they're going through these types of litigations, I think including attorneys don't really take into account, is how much you are impacted on a psychological and emotional level when you're required to go through a contested litigation. So studies have shown that when you get divorced, your brain actually experiences changes in the exact same way as it does when you have the death of a very close loved one. And so this is a really stressful time for our clients. And what we found was even just being the best attorneys that we could be and walking our clients on their path through their divorce, they weren't getting the right level of supports emotionally. And so we determined that we could help and we could create a better program that would help them work through their process, protect themselves emotionally, and also make good choices that would help them succeed in their litigation.
So before we talk about your innovative approach to family law cases, I want to talk a little bit more about what that parent is going through when faced with having to co-parent with maybe the other parent acts badly, or maybe there's domestic violence. Let's talk about what's actually going on in the family when they come to you for that litigation.
Sure. So we definitely see a lot of issues in our clients in what we would call relationships with an imbalance of power, right? Where there's a power and control dynamic in place, and you have one parent who seems to be holding all of the power and the other parent who doesn't have the power. And some people would call that domestic violence. We don't always use that term in our office because we find that some of our clients don't identify themselves as victims or survivors of domestic violence, and they don't have to know that they're experiencing those kinds of power struggles in their relationship and that they need help, right? So what we see a lot, particularly for people who are leaving those types of relationships, is that even though they may not be living in the same place with that person anymore, they still are going through that same cycle of violence or that same sort of power dynamic where you'll have an escalated event, something bad will happen between the two of you. There may be physical violence. It may just be a really emotional time with yelling, screaming, name calling, those kinds of things. And then directly after that, we'll have a little bit of a love bombing phase, right? Where we have someone saying, I'm so sorry, apologizing all the time for their behavior, promising that they'll act better, promising to do X, Y, and Z that the other person really wants from them. And then they don't ever follow through on those promises. And that cycle just kind of continues over and over again.
And what I see a lot of, and maybe you as well, is that a lot of the judges want parents to be able to co-parent. They often want them to have equal parenting time.
Yes.
And if there's a power imbalance, that might affect that. But a lot of times the quote unquote solution, and it's not bad, but it's not complete, is let's just use Our Family Wizard, which I think is a great product because
100%.
it documents communications between the mom and the dad, and there's no questions. There's it minimizes the phone calls and other interactions. But it's a solution. It's just not a complete solution.
Absolutely. So Our Family Wizard is a tool, right? And it's a great tool for people that are in these high conflict relationships, either during their divorce, during their custody litigation, or in a post-judgment relationship, right? Where they already have a judgment of custody or a judgment of divorce, and they're still having to co-parent with each other thereafter. But it's not a total solution. And, I always like to say that one of the things that Our Family Wizard works really well for is that it builds in the fact that you can take a breath before you respond to your ex, so you can be asking yourself, how do I respond to this so that I am not heightening the conflict, but minimizing the conflict?
So tell us about what you've come up with, which I think is completely innovative. I've never heard of any other attorney doing this. What have you decided to do to help your clients through this process of learning how to become co-parents and communicating with their ex?
Thanks for asking, Lisa. Yeah, so we've created a program where we have an attorney working alongside a mental health professional, whether that is a licensed social worker or a licensed psychologist who also has training in conflict management specifically related to co-parenting. And we are offering effectively what is group therapy sessions where you can have an attorney and also a mental health professional there to help guide you through difficult everyday disputes that occur that don't necessarily rise to the level of something that any judge is going to make a decision about or care about necessarily in a family case, but are the types of conflicts that are really making our clients' lives miserable.
So how is that different, that what you're proposing and laying out there, how is it different than having your client just go see their therapist?
That's a great question. So what I was finding is that so many of my clients were working with really well-intentioned and good therapists, but they were getting advice from those therapists about how to respond to certain situations without really knowing how a court might react to that type of response, right? And so it might happen where you would get someone who'd get advice from a therapist and then they would execute that advice. And the next week they would be in my office with me and I would say, I really wish you hadn't done that because that is not how a judge would have wanted you to handle this type of situation. And so it kind of a light bulb just went off in my head that we need to have a way to have that therapy happening in conjunction with, in real time, with the legal advice so that someone is protecting themselves emotionally, which is exceedingly important, but also not making mistakes that are going to impact their litigation.
So if you have a client who's working with you through this program, that's great. It probably reduces the level of stress for them. What's the advice to give for the other side who doesn't have an attorney who's doing, obviously nobody else is doing this. So how do we deal with the fact that the other side is not getting the benefit of the things that you're doing to help your clients?
That's a really good question. And ultimately what I say to my clients all the time is that I can't change your ex. A judge can't change your ex. A therapist can't change your ex. The only person that can change you is you, right? And so really part of this program is figuring out for you how to prioritize responding to some of those things when you know that your ex isn't getting the same level of support that you might be getting, and just sort of having some empathy for them and acknowledging that they're not getting that support, and then thinking that, you know, knowing that they're not having those supports, that at least you can do what you need to do for yourself to reduce the conflict.
So I see this as a really good opportunity to reduce stress of litigation, to make co-parenting happen more quickly in an effective manner, but also to reduce litigation and potentially like save your clients money because they're not having to litigate as much.
Absolutely. That is one of the key purposes to this program, is to use this program as a way to avoid ongoing post-judgment litigation where people are fighting about legal custody decisions, where people are fighting about sort of the day-to-day parenting time disputes and decisions that courts really just don't have a good system to solve in real time.
So I think we're going to have you back next year so you can tell us about some of the examples that your clients have gone through the process and how it's worked out. I can't wait to hear about it.
Absolutely. I'll be happy to come back.
Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you.
In the Name of Family Law is brought to you by Speaker Law Firm.
Thank you for watching In the Name of the Law. See you next week.
Thank you for joining us today for In the Name of the Law. Please go to WLAJ.com for more information on today's topics, and please join us next week for another informative show.